He is twice, for he is many. What did you think about this week's episode of My Hero Academia? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you shortly. Whilst you're there, be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to, because YouTube is increasingly scary place for small content creators. Support your local small content creator today, it will do them a power of good. And whilst you're there, be sure to subscribe to us, especially because we are incredibly close to reaching our 64 subscriber goal. If I reach 64 subscribers, then I'll do a playthrough of My Hero 1 Justice for the channel once this season is over. But between then and now, on to the review. And so, our misadventures with the League of Villains continue, this week picking up where last week's episode finished off with a flashback with Twice. Now I'm going to be honest with you, dear listener, there was a part of me that was worried that they were going to kill him off in this moment, almost like they did with Magnet, you know, give him a bit of a flashback, let us feel sorry for him and then kill him off just there and then. But no, he got his arms broken and he got his mojo back, baby, yeah! And now he's multiplying faster than a rabbit with a calculator. You know, it's always cool, as I often say, that it's great to see more about our cast and their past, especially characters whom we have not seen in quite some time, or at the very least, with the case of Twice, a character that we've not really learned anything more of in quite some time. A few seasons ago we had a little bit of a flashback story, origin thing with him, and from there we've not really had anything since. And this week we got a little bit more, not necessarily necessary, but still it was a fine moment within the story, which it was. If I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, dear listener, there is a part of me that does wish that that whole flashback sequence and all the events connected to it was the entire episode, and almost the entire episode itself was centered around that flashback with the odd cut to what was happening in the present times, which is... There's a part of me that does wish that was the case, but there's another part of me that is thankful that that wasn't the case, because I feel that having all these flashbacks has been a little bit too much for this season. Yeah, I have enjoyed almost all of them, but I'm kind of wishing we had a little bit more stuff happening within the now and not several weeks or several years in the past at this point. Seeing as we touched upon it last week, I'm just going to say that structurally and pacing-wise, this episode was far stronger than last week's episode, though in that review I did feel as though it was designed to be that way. It was designed to feel disorientating, a little bit messed up and confused, because that's how our characters were feeling in that situation. Of course, it worked really well when it came to the flashback sequences and learning more about Toga. That whole sequence last week was just spectacularly done, and if it was intended to be that way, then, you know, hats off to them, a round of applause for them to be able to do it like that, because it really sold the mood of what we were learning about and how it all felt. This week we found a little bit more about the history of Destro, which was a welcome change of pace, even though it feels a little bit of a weird place to be doing it in. Yeah, I know that monologues during fights are a big thing in anime. I know that, at least, even if I'm not the biggest anime aficionado around there. But I have to feel that whilst learning about all that, we've also learned about Reed Destro's quirk. It felt a lot to take in at that moment, just maybe a little bit too much, but of course by the looks of things next week we're going to learn even more, so I suppose it was a little bit more of a tease. If I am going to admit something I didn't like with this episode, it's the fact I'm not terribly keen on the fact that the term quirk was something that originated from Destro's mother. I really don't like it when stories get this linked. It's bad enough in the Star Wars franchise where almost everybody important is related to one another in some way. They're the grandchild or the child or the cousin or the next door neighbour's former roommate kind of a deal. And it just gets to a point where it feels a little bit too coincidental that they should just so happen to bump into someone who should just happen to be the grandchild, or someone who Sir Joe happened to have said in one particular moment that, oh, this ability of my son's is a quirk, and it somehow became an internationally renowned and recognised official terminology. It feels like a bit of a stretch at this point, though. For the sake of my own headcanon, I'm just going to call it unreliable author, and it was just circumstance. It was just a bit of serendipity that Reed Destro's grandmother so happened to say it's his quirk about Destro, and that happened to become the internationally renowned terminology for it. It's just a coincidence. Even though I just said I don't like coincidence, I just, you know what, let's move on, because this is getting a little bit too confusing for this time in the morning. In this episode, we did get a reference to The Incredibles. At last, I was honestly wondering if this show would ever do so, because it felt oddly apt. Of course, we had the politician guy saying, when everyone is a hero, no one is a hero! And again, I was always wondering if My Hero Academia was ever going to reference The Incredibles, because My Hero Academia, for my money, has always felt like the anti-Incredibles, especially how the world is structured, but also some elements of it thematically. You know, it feels as though their use of this phrase, when everyone is a hero, no one is a hero, is a bit more of a twist on it, more so than how it was intended in The Incredibles. In the way that they're using it in My Hero Academia in this moment, it feels a lot more libertarian than the way that The Incredibles was doing it. Almost ironically so, if you really want to think about it, though. That's all stuff that could easily be its own video, and I can guarantee you that is a video that no one wants to listen to and wouldn't be well received, so we'll just move on from that. You know, it's an inversion of it, it's a twist on it, it's playing on the terminology, the tropes and such that we developed within superhero culture, and it's interesting to see someone with an outside perspective, someone who hasn't grown up with these kind of tropes and traditions, just analysing and going through them, which, you know, is something I'm always interested in, a fresh perspective on these kind of things. As a whole episode, it was fine. It was perfectly fine for what it was. It didn't set the world on fire for what it was, but, you know, this kind of stuff, it's always a welcome addition to the narrative. It's an episode which explored little bits. We learned a little bit more about Twice. Whether it was necessary or not was fine, but, you know, it was fine to see him get his mojo back. It really was, and, of course, learning a little bit more about Destro and Destro, again, was fine, was enjoyable. I do feel, though, that as a whole entity, this episode was a lot more about setup than necessarily payoff. It was setting up the big moments that are going to come over the next couple episodes or so. We'll likely have the conclusion to many fights, if not the arc itself, within the next couple episodes. So this is just setting up for those big final climactic fights, so that we can get to that moment, as was teased several episodes ago, where Toga is standing in a field naked, cackling to himself. When we get to that point, we'll get to it. A fine episode overall for what it was, even again if it felt like a lot of setup. Now it's time for Comment Corner! On this week's Comment Corner, we are reflecting upon last week's question that just suddenly became the question of the episode, which was, were there any episodes thus far in My Hero Academia which you haven't liked for one reason or another? Are the episodes any episodes that you hated? You know, I just really wanted to know, because thus far into this entire season, or rather this entire series, I've yet to find an episode that I've outright disliked. Now, on that topic, we have Scott TV Gamer back again with another comment. And they state that the only episodes that I didn't like with this show were the episodes with Bakugo and Todoroki taking special classes with children, and the Aoyama episode after that. And I think those are fair choices. I have to admit that I was incredibly disappointed. Well, maybe not incredibly disappointed, but certainly disappointed nonetheless by the whole remedial arc. When this was first set up to us, I think it was towards the end of this previous season, I expected big things from it, or at least more things than just a couple episodes. You had this great mishmash of different characters who didn't really gel well together, and just thinking about the ways in which they could clash and butt heads before eventually coming together and saving the day and getting their licenses. I liked the ideas behind that, but so much of that arc was seemingly just done behind closed doors. We just saw Todoroki and Bakugo just wandering off to go to lessons, or coming back from their lessons for so much of last year's season, and then it all wraps up with the stuff with the kids, which, whilst it was fun for what it wasn't really that significant, aside from the bit with just developing Endeavour and Todoroki's relationship a little bit more, and of course another mention of the whole Quark Doomsday thing, which I really didn't like, because the more it's mentioned, the more that I worry that this is going to become a bit in the future, if not a future storyline in My Hero Academia as it currently stands, or whatever story or series comes after it, narratively speaking. You know, if we ever get a My Hero Academia Z, it's probably going to be a factor in that. More's the pity. And of course the couple episodes with Aoyama, yeah, that was, again, I can't say that I disliked it or I disliked the remedial arc stuff, but it's another a moment where you think that something else is going to happen, you think that something else that's big and more bold and exciting is going to happen, but it doesn't. It's just Aoyama giving Midori a cheese. Like, in that moment you thought, oh, this is the moment we're going to find out that he's the mole, or this is the moment where we're going to find out something significant about him, or he's going to come to the fore and be more of a main character, which he kind of was a little bit for a couple episodes, but then after that it just back in the background again because it just necessitated it, which is a shame, because I hear that the big boss, the main writer behind all this, really likes Aoyama. So you're kind of surprised that they don't do more with them. I don't know if they're saving them for another date. I really don't know. Speaking of saving for a later date, and I don't know whether this should be the question for this episode, but I saw a poll the other day about My Hero Academia, and this doesn't count as spoilers because we're just talking about something in the War of the Round, but it was effectively a poll that was saying, oh, who do you think's going to win in the end, the heroes or the villains? And shockingly, the villains got a decent number of votes. I think it was something like only 60% of the people that took part in it thought that the heroes were going to win in the end, but 40% thought that the villains were going to win in the end. And I find that weird because out of very, very rarely do you get a situation where the villains win. You know, I think that's fascinating. So, do you, dear listener, think that in the grand scheme of things, when we reach the grand finale of My Hero Academia, do you think the heroes are going to win, or the villains are going to win, or some third party, maybe the vigilantes will win? Let me know in the comment section down below. This feels like a very tenuous way to set up a question for a future episode, but whatever, it's all I've got at the moment. I'm still waking up and it's not even 12 o'clock yet. Thank you all for listening, see you all next time, and goodbye! Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!